in many parts of the country that is going on. And they are being manned by retired generals, and we know them. Yes, we know them. Nobody can pretend he doesn't know them. I did a letter to former President Buhari, because somebody I sent to go and conduct a primary somewhere reported back to me, a retired general of Northern Extraction, told me that, look, Adams, you are worried about the challenge of conducting primaries in Zamfara. The challenge he sees there is far more than that. And if it's not dealt with, Nigeria will not know peace in parts of the country. And this go all the way through the belt, all to Kaduna. And it, up to, yeah, correct. And he told me that those involved in this illegal mining, they use choppers. They procure arms exactly the same way as our military were doing in the South. They give them arms. They use choppers to come and cut away the gold. And they take them out of this country and make billions of US dollars. And the federal government is not doing what it should be doing. I took this letter to the former president when I was national chairman of APC. And I said, call the general to give you more brief. In fact, what is happening, or what subsequently happened in that part of the country, was exactly what the general told me was going to happen. Because these guys have been weaponized by the illegal big men who deploy them, secure territories, and the weapon is meant to protect the Chinese and other foreigners who they actually employ to carry out the mining. And on occasion, they use the same weapon to carry out banditry, kidnapping, and all of the terrible things that are going on. Chief of Committee Chairman of Defense Staff, tell the defense I said so. That some retired military officers, army officers are involved in it. The day we can't tell the truth, this country cannot flourish. We can't change our, when it affects our people, we are at our best. We talk strong. Some other people appear to be above the law. That is what is going on with solid mineral. It is not that we don't know where it is. We have a whole survey of where we have what across the length and breadth of Nigeria. We also know, everybody complaining about certain people from certain nationalities. How they got here, even as we are talking now, they are doing those illegal mining. And those guys are getting richer when Nigeria State is getting poorer. But we carry the consequences of banditry, kidnapping, and that which these on illegal armed men, which they equip. Sir, who can afford to buy a chopper to land in an illegal mining site, cut away gold, return to Sediti, and then on the way to airport, bam, take them out of the country? This is happening. So I agree with you, but my position is that we shouldn't, as senators, be lamenting. As senators, we should fix the problem. We should tell the executive, you must deploy exactly the same force that you deploy against illegal oil bunkering. That same force should be deployed to deal with criminals who are money. When I say criminal, it can be a retired general, it can be a retired permanent secretary, it can be a retired trade unionist or a retired labor leader. Whoever is involved, they should be dealt with. Let Nigeria see that we are not condoning this. We are not lamenting what is going on. When you have a country of people who are above the law because they are supposed to have served the country, they have retired, and now they become the real barons. So I agree with you that the solid sector, and I'm happy with the word made by Baba that oil was discovered by accident. What they were looking for was solid minerals. And now what was discovered is like that what has become of the public sector, the power sector. You used to say generator as a standby. Now the standby is disco power. The resource of power is generator. I don't think we should lament here. We should recommend steep penalties, and through the leadership of the Senate and the National Assembly, draw President's attention that he has to find the political will to deal decisively with criminals that are cutting away our precious stones and other precious solid minerals. Thank you, sir, for this privilege. I don't like to... what I didn't hear from you is whether there is a plan in the budget to provide for recruitment of more men. Because I know during the campaign we said we can double the size of the armed forces because the population of Nigeria has doubled from after the Civil War. Now, if this is on the table rather, I will understand. But our armed forces must be made accountable. They must be made accountable because it borders on blackmail. We say we don't give more money. Since I came here, I arrived at the Senate. We have done for the general nation 2 appropriations, 2024 and 2023. The armed forces, we've done several supplementary appropriations. And the revelation on the floor of the Senate is that they are buying the wrong equipment. Now today, when you said we should do proper oversight, I raised that motion that the Committee on Navy, Army, Air Force, and others should benefit from robust National Assembly oversight functions. That motion was defeated. It is on record that the armed forces are oftentimes or sometimes procuring equipment that they really don't need. The issue of the yacht is one shining example of complete gold displacement. I think they spent about $6 million converted to Naira that they were asking for to maintain the yacht. And I remember President Buhari said he never asked them to buy yacht. Which president will go on a yacht? On holiday? So I think when you say we should remove them to first line charge, you must trace the origin of the security crisis we are facing today. The only thing I will favor for first line charge is education. Because people who are educated and skilled, they are unlikely to be so poor that a terrorist organization can easily recruit them. If we put all the money to defend the country, and there's nothing left to do education, nothing left for healthcare, nothing left for investment in the manufacturing sector, all of those things that we ensure that our GDP grows at a reasonable basis, at least at a rate higher than our population growth, our poverty will remain endemic. The superhighway to criminality is hunger and starvation. So the armed forces have to understand that Nigeria doesn't have unlimited resources. And when they are buying equipment, they should buy what works. They have this scandal about buying second-hand equipment, military equipment. And as oversight, you can trade that, you're all right, you retire as a senior military officer. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So when you say we should remove them from the first line charge, everybody first line charge, I mean first line charge, Navy, Air Force, what will be left in the treasury for the mass of our people? Are they going to be defending the graveyard? So we need to draw a sensitive balance. And there is no question that we need to enhance the competence and the proper kitting of the men and women who have put out their life for Nigeria. And I want to be on record that I do, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate, and I continue to appreciate the enormous, huge sacrifices that our men and women in uniform are making. But their senior officers should be encouraged to procure wisely in line with what the military need. Sir, so you are probably from northwest, northeast. Chairman, there's no better way to speak to this. I am sure if you engage some of the soldiers on the field, they tell you they give them the ration bullets. They don't have enough ammunition. Whereas the terrorists are That is not because of budgeting. So we need to scrutinize and encourage and do everything to persuade the leadership of the armed forces to put the right priority in the right places. But if money was unlimited, anything you want, take and secure me. But if I have so little, I have to balance between my kitchen, my security, roof over my head, water for me to drink, a hospital for me to go to. Because even if the army secure my life, they do not really secure my head. So all of this, the federal government has to deal with. So in a sense, we need to be sympathetic to the executive as to how does it get this money. And I go back to President Buhari's repeated statement. I am trying to draw a bucket of water from a dry well. Whosoever has to take a cup from that dry well should make sure that he sip it slowly as and when necessary to survive 365 days before another round of budget is done. We shouldn't give anybody as legislature knowing the fact, because we are approving loans and loans and loans, and Nigerians are abusing of our approving loans. When they are so approving, we cannot now ask the president to spend over and above the revenue available, whether through what we generate or through what we borrow. So it's not about whether we like it. It's about, my friend, I have limited money. Manage it judiciously. Refocus your priorities. There should be accounting. Nobody should be above accountability. I think if we do that with the money they have, now TRADOC cannot be different from the Air Forces. When they get the envelope, it's up to the Army to say, TRADOC should attract this. If they choose not to, it's not for the Senate to lament it. Because they have to determine their own priorities. And I thought training is a priority, but if they think otherwise, it is their choice. But sir, remember, Nigeria doesn't have all the money, and many people are opposed to Nigeria, borrow more and more money, because that is the debt our children are going to pay. Let them pay for the railways we are building. Let them pay for the superhighway that will be in existence. Let them pay for a model airport. These are the things that when they are paying, they say, oh yes, our parents spent money on this, now we are paying for it. But if they can't find what they are paying for, there is a double jeopardy. So we as senators who are also responsible for representing our constituents and who understand the challenges facing our constituents have to help the executive to do a very delicate balance. But I'm sympathetic. We must commend the Army and the Air Force, in fact, the military, for the supreme price many men and women have paid. And I pray that God will bless them. And Nigeria gets richer, it should also invest more in its armed forces. But for now, the envelope system, we can't.
Grossly violating the principles of separation of powers and rubber stamping the whims and caprices of your office, all while singing the international anthem of sycophants on your mandate we shall stand. Mr. President, thanks to your political machinations, Nigeria is now bedeviled by a captured National Assembly, the most ineffective in its checks and balances role since the start of the Fourth Republic. In 2006, the Fourth National Assembly had the audacity to reject the tenure exemption bid of a sitting president. In 2010, the Sixth National Assembly summoned the courage to stand against a power hijacking cabal and restore Nigeria to the path of constitutionality by invoking the doctrine of necessity. In 2011, the House of Representatives of the Seventh National Assembly had the courage to elect its leaders, as did the Senate of the Eighth National Assembly in 2015, defying executive interference. This National Assembly, the 10th, has by its unconstitutional endorsement of the president's abuse of powers proven to be the most spineless in our recent history. Through its actions and inactions, the National Assembly has in effect become the 48th member of the president's cabinet. While a cabinet minister by the name of Wike, is it Wike or Wike or Wakeep? Why a cabinet minister has more or less become a third-time state governor in Rivers State, pampered by the indulgences of the president. Recent events have made it clear to Nigerians that at this assembly being placed in 2006, when the third-term agenda was proposed, our democracy would have since morphed into one of Africa's lamentable tales of sit-tight dictatorship. To the president of the Nigerian state, Senate, who has not heeded the call to subject himself to an unbiased investigation, to clear his name of the allegations leveled against him, and under whose leadership the National Assembly has become a carry-go legislature, hiding under the umbrella of technicalities and a dubious voice voting system, I leave you and your conscience with the words of Frederic Bessières, former deputy of the French National Assembly. He said, and I quote, "When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it." To the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, under whose brand of politics the institution of legislative oversight is collapsing and our democracy is faced with an existential threat, I say, Mr. President, Nigeria is too delicate for this kind of politics. If this state capture was what you meant by a Milokan, it is an anticlimax that can only be counterproductive at the end. I urge you, Mr. President, to think deeply and reflect on these words. No man is wise enough, nor good enough to be trusted with unlimited power. Mr. President, please stop playing God. The two main contenders in the ongoing institutional immorality Olympics are the executive and the legislature. It's often said that these two arms of government suffer the worst forms of arrested development because they were the direct victims of the military era. But after 26 years of uninterrupted democracy, one must ask, how much longer before our institutions finally mature? While it is not in dispute that our institutions and constitution are inadequate, it has become obvious that our biggest problems in this nation are the occupiers of these institutions and executors of the Constitution. The quality of leadership in Nigeria has become so repugnant that citizens must declare a state of emergency on governance, demanding that every aspiring public office holder undergo rigorous psychiatric evaluation before seeking election. Dear Nigerians, the event that unfolded on the floor of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petitions on Tuesday, March 25, 2025, are an apt and timely illustration of our leadership deficit. Senate, the word, originates from the Latin senatus, which means council of elders. Elders, as used in this context, does not necessarily connote chronological age, but a demonstration of such wisdom, decorum, and decency that commands respect. Senator Onyekachi Nwemboye's descent into street-level vitriol was an affront to the essence of the Senate. Instead of engaging the visiting citizens in reasoned, factual debate, he chose to drag the hallowed chambers through the mud. Dr. Obia Ezekwesili, in recognition of our accomplishments in political reform and gender inclusion advocacy, was appointed chairwoman of the Board of Women Political Leaders, WPL, a global body based in Brussels, Belgium, in February 2023. In that capacity, it is our responsibility to speak up whenever a female Nigerian politician is subjected to the misogynistic idiosyncrasies of politics in Nigeria. It was in that capacity that she appeared to speak for Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, who has leveled allegations of sexual harassment against the President of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Godswill Akpabio. There's clear evidence in reports and recordings from the occasion that there were repeated attempts to intimidate and silence Dr. Ezekwesili and our team. The institutional collapse and the failure of our leadership recruitment process was summed up in Senator Iwemboye's statement to Dr. Obi Ezekwesili. People like you cannot be here. People like who exactly? What that means is that the Senate is not a place for the best, it's not a place for the brightest, it's not a place for the fittest and most competent in our country. What that means is that our political institutions are not designed for people of character, competence, and capacity, as Dr. Obi Ezekwesili often puts it. What that means is that our legislature is not designed for people who are sticklers for accountability and due process, but for a band of legislators. For those who question why Dr. Obi Ezekwesili stood up to the bullies and fought back, let me remind us that in the God-given wisdom of King Solomon, there are two ways to respond to such situations. And these two ways are found in Proverbs chapter 26, verses 4 and 5. It states, and I quote, verse number 4, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him." Verse 5, "Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes." While Dr. Obi Ezekwesili chose to apply the wisdom contained in verse number 5, "For the attack dogs who may come after me, for standing with my sister and compatriot, I rest my case with the wisdom contained in verse 4. I'm not going to join issues with you. Fellow citizens, at the center of this political banditry is the motor park brand of politics, nurtured by the old brigade politicians, and in recent times by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Mr. President, it is through your influence that the Nigerian National Assembly has become a haven for legislative rascality. Mr. President, it's under your watch that the National Assembly has become an extension of the executive, grossly violating the principles of separation of powers and rubber stamping the whims and caprices of your office, all while singing the international anthem of psychoviolence on your mandate, we shall stand. Mr. President, thanks to your political machinations, Nigeria is now bedeviled by a captured National Assembly, the most ineffective in its checks and balances role since the start of the Fourth Republic. In 2006, the Fourth National Assembly had the audacity to reject the tenure exemption bid of a sitting president. In 2010, the Sixth National Assembly summoned the courage to stand against the power hijacking cabal and restore Nigeria to the path of constitutionality by invoking the doctrine of necessity. In 2011, the House of Representatives of the Seventh National Assembly had the courage to elect its leaders, as did the Senate of the Eighth National Assembly in 2015, defying executive interference. This National Assembly, the 10th, has by its unconstitutional endorsement of the President's abuse of powers proven to be the most spineless in our recent history. Through its actions and inactions, the National Assembly has in effect become the 48th member of the President's cabinet. While a cabinet minister by the name of Wike, is it Wike or Wike or Wakeep? While a cabinet minister has more or less become a third-time state governor in Rivers State, pampered by the indulgences of the president. Recent events have made it clear to Nigerians that at this assembly being placed in 2006, when the third-term agenda was proposed, our democracy would have since morphed into one of Africa's lamentable tales of sit-tight dictatorship. To the president of the Nigerian Senate, who has not heeded the call to subject himself to an unbiased investigation, to clear his name of the allegations leveled against him, and under whose leadership the National Assembly has become a carry-go legislature, hiding under the umbrella of technicalities and a dubious voice voting system, I leave you and your conscience with the words of Frederic Bessières, former deputy of the French National Assembly. He said, and I quote, "When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it." To the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, under whose brand of politics the institution of legislative oversight is collapsing and our democracy is faced with an existential threat, I say, Mr. President, Nigeria is too delicate for this kind of politics. If this state capture was what you meant by eloquently, it is an anticlimax that can only be counterproductive at the end. I urge you, Mr. President, to think deeply and reflect on these words. No man is wise enough, nor good enough to be trusted with unlimited power. Mr. President, please stop playing God. Four years ago, on Sunday, April 4, 2021, in a speech titled "The Conspicuous Handwriting on the Wall," I warned the President Muhammadu Buhari-led government about the dangers of the second-term curse. The second-term curse is a pattern of presidents being less successful in their second terms. Citing the Wall Street Journal, I pointed out that political analysts have identified hubris as the cause of this pattern. This was one of the moments I took a strong public stance against the policy positions and governance outcomes in the previous administration, despite my access to the president. I did it because I did not want that government to fail. Much as I disagree with the politics of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I'm speaking up today because, again, I do not want the president to fail. It is not in the interest of any Nigerian, let alone the Nigerians whose survival hangs in the balance, for President Tinubu to fail. Whether we like it or not, this administration holds the reins of our economy, and we cannot allow them to flush it down the drain. From his approach to governance, right from his first day in office, the current administration, though in its first term, seems to have drifted in the sea of hubris, in the process steering the polity adrift and struggling to stabilize it. Since justice, equity, and good governance are the foundations for national prosperity, and because injustice can frustrate any economic agenda, it is time for this government to embrace humility and govern with justice and fairness before it is too late. God forbid we should say, as we still did to the House of Commons in 1935, when the situation was manageable, it was neglected. And now that it's thoroughly out of hand, too late, the remedies which then might have effected a cure. There's nothing new in this story. Want of foresight, unwillingness to act when action will be simple and effective, lack of clear thinking, confusion of counsel until the emergency comes, until self-preservation strikes the jeering gun. These are the features which constitute the endless repetition of history. It is for this reason that I'm compelled to present the truth about and a pathway out of Nigeria's economic dire straits. I'm now proceeding to the economic challenge before President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. As we may recall, the renewed hope upon which the president rode to power began to dwindle from day one, with the mishandling of such sensitive transactions as the fuel subsidy and exchange rate regimes, and even the coup in Niger. Within a year and a half of this administration, the implementation of the otherwise audacious economic policies triggered an avalanche of economic hardships for the Nigerian people. It led to excruciating food inflation, with over 1 million additional Nigerians thrown into severe food insecurity. It further led to an over 430% increase in fuel price as of October 2024. At the same time, Nigeria experienced the highest ever rate of currency depreciation and the lowest foreign direct investment record, going by data traced back to 2013, even as multinationals began to exit the country. To capture in data the despondency experienced by Nigerians as a result of the reforms, my attention was drawn to the misery index, which is the sum of unemployment and inflation rates. According to the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, Nigeria has one of the world's highest misery indexes, with many Nigerians experiencing a cost of living crisis and weak purchasing power due to rising inflation. Furthermore, a July 2024 report by the Financial Times describes the conundrum in these words: in the nearly 15 months since Bola Tinubu became president, he has forced his 220 million fellow Nigerians to swallow some bitter medicine. He removed the generous fuel subsidy, one of the few benefits citizens receive from their inefficient and corrupt state. He allowed the country currency, the naira, to enter free fall, fueling imported inflation and triggering the worst cost of living crisis in a generation. These measures have pushed tens of millions of already impoverished people deeper into misery. The stampede deaths in several cities at the end of 2024 were the most horrific climax to the economic hardships experienced by Nigerians. The heartbreaking reports of parents throwing their children over a fence in Ibadan to ensure access to charity food distribution, leading to the deaths of over 35 children, were tragically almost reminiscent of the biblical famine in Samaria, during which parents resorted to eating their own children for survival. While it is not in dispute that difficult economic reforms come with costs and are usually associated with periods of hardship, 4 essentials must be taken into consideration when driving reforms. Number 1, empathy, which means understanding and sharing in the plight of the people. Number 2, methodology, which indicates a systematic approach to deploying tools from the reform toolbox to cushion the biting effects of reforms. Number 3, transparency, which mandates governments to act openly and to carry the citizens along at every major decision point in the reform journey. And number 4, responsibility, which requires leaders to take the lead in bearing the difficult and painful impacts of reforms. I leave it to the consciousness of Nigerians and to the consciences of those in this administration entrusted